Thank you everyone for coming to Users Group Stevenage in what is a bit of a surprise circumstances this evening with the snap general election. First of all, I'd like to welcome Deni Krevesic from the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transport.
Member of Bus Centre of Excellence. And also I'm a member of Bus Centre of Excellence. But also I'm loud, you can hear me without microphone, don't worry.
That's okay, we're going to take a seat in a moment, we'll shuffle the chairs. And I have to inform you that unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, we haven't got our Lib Dem candidate or her representative here this evening, but we will catch up with Lisa in the coming weeks so that when we put everything together we'll get answers from Lisa as well on the questions that are going to be asked. Without further ado, let us welcome our Reform candidate for the Stevenage Constituency, Mr. Peter Hopper, who's going to sit in the front here next to Maureen.
I'm here to learn, Steve, not to participate on stuff I don't understand. So I'm going to learn with you, if you forgive me.
Second, we have Paul Dawson representing the Green Party. I'll stand aside. Third, we have Joshua Smith from the Christian Party Alliance. Next we have Kevin Bonavia from the Labour and Cooperative Party. And last but not least, we have Alex Clarkson for the Conservative and Unionist Party. So gentlemen, please take your seats and let me introduce you now to Claire. Claire Walters joined Bus Users UK as Chief Executive in 2012. Champion of social inclusion, Claire has worked extensively with marginalised groups to improve access to life's opportunities. Under her leadership, Bus Users has become a registered charity and a leading voice for accessible transport, as well as a founding member of the Sustainable Transport Alliance and the only approved alternative dispute resolution body for bus and coach passengers. In 2021, Claire was appointed Disability and Access Ambassador for the coach and bus industry by the Cabinet Office. Big welcome to Claire. Thank you very much.
It's a bit long. It's a factor of being so old, I'm afraid. I've done a lot. I'm also the token woman on this panel. You're going to. Okay, we are going to start off by giving people a little bit of uninterrupted, he said pointedly, chance to speak about, for 3 minutes, about the things that they think they want you to know. So we're going to start in the order in which they came in, I believe. So if I can hand over to you, Paul. See if your mic's working.
You want me to use it?
Hopefully.
Yes, well, it doesn't seem to be coming through. But there we go. Oh, good evening, everybody. My name's Paul, and I'm the Green Party candidate for Stevenage for the upcoming general election. I would like to thank Bugs, if I'm allowed to call you Bugs, for inviting me along this evening. And thank you also for all coming, appreciate that, and to David for organising this event. I felt a bit intimidated, to be honest, because there's a room full of bus users. We've got the chief executive, not the chair, but the chief executive does the work of the bus user group, and a trade experts down the end there. So yes, somewhat intimidated. I didn't come by bus this evening, but I did walk, so it's not all bad. Thank you. So the opinion polls tell us that the Tories are toast, and that Labour may well be the major party after the next election. That's a bit sad, I think, not because I expected Greens to form government, but because there's not very much difference between those two parties. It's only a question of degree. At a time of environmental crisis, massive inequality and poverty, we need bold, radical and progressive policies. They both plan to fix things, as far as I can tell, without spending any money. I wish I could pull that trick off. We are in dire need of a fairer, greener country with a much better transport system. More Greens in Parliament would hold the other parties to account, and every Green vote would send a message that green issues, equality and fairness matter to us all. It's time for real hope and for real change. It's time to vote Green. Thank you.
And you didn't even take your full 3 minutes, so I thank
Brevity.
you for that. Yeah, brevity. Okay, Joshua, let me pass on to you for your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Smith, and I have lived in Hertfordshire for 10 years. I was born in London, and I've also lived in 3 counties. I am running as a candidate for the first time. Recently, I felt the call to stand as a young person, as many candidates are older. Thank you. Older and young people need a voice that they can relate to and vote for. Stevenage is like a second home to me. I have worked an apprenticeship here. CPA pledges to support marriage and families. As a son blessed with 2 loving parents, I grieve for every child who has suffered the damage of dysfunctional families and broken homes. All parents and children deserve to be supported. Healthy marriages means healthy families. Respect for life, because disabled and even unborn lives matter. We would support anyone in a crisis pregnancy situation that needs help. Restore GP fund holding to put money into GP surgeries and expand them so everyone can get a GP appointment again. Cut income taxes to help struggling households, from saving and simplifying government contracts. Cut crime and reduce reoffending by working with people when they come out of prison. Save our city centres by getting rid of commercial rates from a turnover tax, we explain in our manifesto. Stevenage is rich with retailers who supply fun, food and useful resources, so we should support them with lower rates and rent while they remain. Rebuild and restore Britain from money saved by cutting quangos. The money spent on quangos was £90 billion in 2010, but £265 billion last year. That's a rise of over £100 billion in real terms. By stopping some funding and reducing funding in others, we can get more to frontline services and spend on capital investment. Full details are in our manifesto on our website. Please vote for CPA on the 4th of July 2024. Thank you.
Very impressed by the timekeeping of these people. That's so far, I'd have to shout at anyone. Come on, prove me wrong.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you everyone here for hosting tonight's event. I want to particularly pay tribute to Pugs for the work that you've been doing to improve services for people in our town. And you need an MP that's going to be an ally and a champion for you on your side. So, a bit like myself. I've been a solicitor. I've always spoken up for people who don't have a voice of their own. I stood up for victims of the phone hacking scandal in that role. I've also been a councillor for 12 years, where I was also served as Armed Forces Champion. Again, sticking up for people who need a voice but they don't have of their own. Now, I'm here in Stevenage. I live in the Old Town. I put myself forward to be a full-time MP, an MP that's going to have an office that can come to, an MP that's going to hold advice surgeries, that's going to meet with community groups like Bugs and bring people together, bring the stakeholders, bring the bus companies, bring the the county council, the borough council, and the government, whichever party that may be. I am a Labour man, but I will work with whoever's there to get results. And the fact of the matter is that the bus services in this town and our villages is not up to the standard that we expect. It's not up to the standard that it used to be several years ago. And that's causing many of the problems that we face today. The overuse of our roads by cars and also the state of our roads, people not being able to get to where they need to safely, and it means that our lifestyles have become poorer as a result. We need a fairer, greener transport system to allow people to live the lives that they want to live. So I'm here tonight to listen to what my opponents say and give you my own answers and what Labour will do with a strong Labour MP for Stevenage too. Thank you.
Okay, I've still not had the opportunity to show to anybody. Alex, are you going to give me that option?
Probably, I just want to agree with the fellow candidates on the stage. Thank you so much to Bucks for hosting this event. It's a real pleasure to be here. I look forward to listening to the candidates, also listening to what you, the audience, have to say. But a couple of things from me. Clear action, clear plan, secure future. That's what you can vote for. You've got a candidate who is truly local, who's lived in Stevenage his whole life and is passionate about standing up for his hometown and villages. That's who you can vote for. We want to reduce the cost of living and grow the economy. I want to reduce immigration to free up health and housing. I want to build better homes on brownfield sites whilst retaining the green belt. We're going to rejuvenate the town centre, but let's not forget the neighbourhood shops and the village high streets as well. I'll tackle crime and antisocial behaviour to keep Stevenage safe, but crucially for these hustings, we need to keep investing in public transport, and I know that having lived here all my life. You know, my nan and I used to get what's now the SB7 from Simon's Green to the town centre. It was the same bus stop on Bute Crescent. She used to either walk around the co-op or go to Woolies and we'd have an ice cream under the clock tower. I waited on the same corner in Datchwood for years to catch the school bus. When my sister and I were old enough, we'd hop on the 379 and come into town and go to Cineworld. So I know the secret of Stevenage's success is its connectivity. I've lived here all my life, I know. The A1M runs alongside. The A602 runs through it. We're the first stop on the East Coast Main Line. We get to King's Cross in 20 minutes. That's why people want to live here. That's why small businesses want to set up shop here. And that's why I'm proud that the government has put record investment into Stevenage infrastructure since 2010. £45 million for the new railway, the new platform at Stevenage Station, £750,000 to refurb Nebworth Station. Thanks to the Conservatives, £37.5 million in Town's Fund grant. Some of that went onto the Stevenage Interchange bus station. £30 million has come in as well recently through the Bus Service Improvement Scheme. So we've got better electric buses. We've got reduced airfare, bus fares, airfares possibly one day. We've got more accessible bus stops. We've got better information on the boards and on the apps. And we've got a new smart ticket system that integrates rail fares as well. And what's more, Hertfordshire is about to get £88 million thanks to the restructuring of the HS2 funds, which will mean more road projects, which will mean more road resurfacing projects, and it will mean we can continue our war on potholes, which we will mean, and it will mean more money for buses too. So, one thing to remember, the Conservatives will keep the £2 bus fare you can get around for £2, Labour will not commit to it. It's the Conservatives delivering the long-term road improvements for this country. It's the Conservatives that will back drivers by cancelling ULEZ and stopping pay-per-mile charging. But it's the Conservatives that are backing bus customers too. We're providing sustainable bus transport. We're providing affordable bus services. So vote for me, Alex Clarkson, on July the 4th, the local guy. I'll keep Stevenage moving.
Well done. It's absolutely no fun for me. Nobody's going to vote for me. Give me an opportunity to bellow at anyone. So, okay, so everybody's had a chance to make their statements and everybody's listened to them respectfully, so I thank you for that. We don't want this to turn into a complete bun fight, but there will be differences of opinions in this room, I've no doubt. So, we are lucky enough to have had questions sent in by various members of this audience. So we're going to start with a question from Robert. Is Robert here, Robert?
Okay, the question is written here. There is currently a national shortage of bus drivers, from what I understand. During COVID, many drivers choose to change jobs to drive lorries, fill in roles previously undertaken by EU citizens. When bus companies take on new contracts, too frequently they can only do so to the detriment of other services by reducing schedules or cutting routes, leaving whole communities isolated and passengers out of pocket in being forced to use expensive alternatives. This is to the candidates. How can you make sure that any bus company contracted to run a service can supply enough buses to get people to use them and offer a reliable enough service?
Okay, the candidates have all had these questions in advance, so there's no excuse that people say, I don't know. So, I'm going to start down your end this time, Alex, and we'll come back this way. So do you want to take first pop at this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for your question. And it's one that's extremely important. Look, the way things are at the moment is that operators are contractually obliged to fulfil their obligations. And that has been done in part with Arriva, particularly here in Stevenage. But I'm hearing on the doorstep that there are buses that don't turn up on time. There are buses that don't turn up altogether. And it's because there's less drivers, there's less engineers. So my job as an MP would work with bodies such as Interlink and Hearts Partnership and put pressure on these operators to fulfil their contractual obligations. That's what I should be doing. That's what we'd be lobbying for. There's been some good things. I think there's some great rural connectivity here that links the villages into Stevenage. But certainly the Stevenage services are ones that we have big problems with. Look, we've had new bus services. There's a new bus that goes from Stevenage out to a shopping centre park in East Hertfordshire. There's been the extension of the number 9 bus, which now goes not from Bedford to Hitchin, it now stops in Stevenage. So there have been additional routes. What I'm not very pro is Labour's answer to this, which will be to remove franchises from private bus companies and instead place them in the hands of local authorities, which is typical Labour. What we're going to see now is local authorities burdened with more responsibility with no clear solution. I don't quite see how local authorities can run bus services any better than private operators. What we need to do is make sure that we work with the private operators and make sure that these services are operational and that the Stevenage gets the buses it deserves. Finally, just to look at where buses have been given to local authority, take West Yorkshire, for example. It's costed £100 million for that local authority to run the bus services. It is not for councils to run bus services. Otherwise, what will happen? There'll be two things. They'll either go bankrupt, like Labour's Birmingham, or it'll just cost us more, which is probably what we see in the Labour manifesto. Tax, tax, tax.
Thank you, Alex. Looks like you've actually read the manifesto particularly closely of Labour, because they haven't mentioned doing taxes for that. But let's see if you can answer the question which was asked, was that how are you going to get enough bus drivers?
Right, let's get back to that point, because for all kinds of reasons, and there's one reason given in there, Robert, about bus drivers not leaving the industry, we have to get them back. And that means we have to get an attractive bus industry for them to come back to. And my Conservative opponent here is talking about, oh well, let's have more of the status quo. Let's have the franchise system, these private companies. Aren't they so great? Isn't Arriva amazing? Private companies are in there for a profit. That's what they're there for. And that means that yes, they may sign up to a contract, but I've been a councillor and I've had to deal with contracts. And the problem is, once you sign off that contract, the power really is in their hands. And you can only come back to them when you renew the contract, and even then, you're subject to government rules. So the answer really has to be giving control back to elected authorities and local communities. If you do look at the Labour manifesto, what we're talking about is actually control of franchises by local authorities. This has been rolled out, even under this government. You've seen what a Labour mayor in Manchester has done there. When they've given the powers, you've seen fares reduced by 20% since Andy Burnham became mayor there. So what we have here, we have Hearts County Council, hands behind its back. We had last year the Zebra falling apart, and we had Phil Bibby, councillor in Stevenage, and Lean on transport, saying, oh, well, Arriva just couldn't afford to do it, so that was that then. Well, I'm sorry, councillors should not be observers. Councillors should be holding these companies to account. So under a Labour government, yes, we are going to give councils control. So it's not just cities and certain towns in the country, the whole country, you can actually have control of your bus services. And that will give drivers the incentive to come back to well-run bus companies where we don't have such old buses, we have newer buses, and routes that are chosen with the public. The public have to be consulted on routes, and by God, do we need different routes in this town.
Thank you. I don't actually need that one. You hang on to that one and you can take your through. But in terms of the enhanced partnership work, that is actually a partnership between councils and private bus companies, and you get passenger groups not dissimilar to this one, chairing a lot of them, so you can pull it all back when people start going, I want this, I want that. Bring it back to what passengers want. So it's not that the system is completely broken or that it doesn't work, but it isn't very well funded, and it still doesn't really answer the question. Making it bigger, making it more attractive doesn't actually bring people back. Nobody wants to talk about the big B in the room, do they? But let's see if we do when we go over to Joshua.
Well, with CPA, one of our core values is to rebuild Britain. And one of the ways that we plan to do that is to take some of the routes and find ways to build roads so then there's like more than one way for these bus routes to actually reach their destination, because I've been on a bus before. In fact, even better than that, I know we're not talking about the Uno buses, but I've been on one of those like to get to uni, and well, so many things can happen from point A to point B that can cause problems. For example, the bus could suddenly break down. Something happens along the way that causes a delay. You get the picture. But then going back to rebuilding Britain, like we plan to create that. Now, how on earth are we going to do that? Like, where's the money coming from? Well, going back to what I said earlier, we plan to cut quangos, and for those of you who do not know, those are quasi-autonomous, non-governmental organisations, and what that basically is funds that are not from the government, that basically organisations that are not funded by the government, that literally do not, even though they are placed in these places, do not treat patients or even train teachers or even teach pupils. And they're not being used, they're of no use, but they're draining a lot of money, and that's where we're going to get the money from.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to you, and maybe I'll pick up some threads from both of you when you.
If you don't mind, I'll stand.
Go.
It's easier for me. I made a few notes, but I hope I can read them. Okay, so the elephant in the room, which the big parties don't talk about, is Brexit. That's caused us all sorts of problems, not least in workforce. So we need to think about that quite seriously, I think. This is going to be a bit unpopular, probably, and a bit left field, and probably not Green Party policy. But we've got a large number of migrants in hotels that we're paying for. I mean, not letting them work. So why don't we let them work while we're processing their applications? Just a thought. I know it might be popular with a lot of people, but it might solve some of our problems. A labour force that wants to work, that can't work, so let them work. Okay, moving on to the question, because that wasn't a question, that was an observation, wasn't it, really? I nearly agree with Kevin, not quite. I think that public transport should be in the control of public bodies. I don't think it should be run for profit, because money is going into shareholders rather than to service. I'm old enough to remember Sheffield, when it had an integrated bus service run by a local council, and there were good services that went to the right places, on time, at the right price, and then it was privatised, and there was competition, and it's a disaster. So we need...
I'm from...
Sorry.
It's not.
Please.
Well, I'm from Sheffield.
I
It costs
understand
80
that,
million subsidy.
But
That's
this
what the
gentleman's
buses cost.
got the right to the stage at the moment.
Well, he's referred to Sheffield.
I
Most people know
understand
about
that, but
Sheffield.
we have no the question to the
I'm telling you about the
audience just
subsidy in
now.
Sheffield. So
Thank
where's the
you,
money coming
but
from?
let this gentleman...
Please don't be rude. That's not very Christian of you, is it?
Right, just carry on.
Tell us where the
So-
money's coming from.
Please stop interrupting the candidates. It's not your role in this event.
Very rude. So I think that should be in control of the local councils, then they could be integrated across the piece without having to worry about profit for shareholders. I quite like the campaign for the protection of rural England's policy proposal of 1 bus per hour per village, so we get feeders from the villages into the main roads where there's a more regular service. I think that would be a great thing. I don't think I want to say anything else. I think I've probably upset enough people already, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I think the one exemplar that everybody looks at in terms of publicly owned bus services is Transport for London. Everybody holds this up, says it's a wonderful service because you get buckets of buses going all sorts of places, and it's great. That's not actually run by the council. It's the council's contract, which is run by Transport for London, a quango, which is a necessary quango in a big place like London, I'm afraid, in order to try and keep the thing running as it should do. But it's also then contracting lots of private operators to provide all those bus services. No private operator will come and run a bus service if there's not a bit of profit in there for it somewhere. And the same thing is happening in Manchester, in Birmingham, in all the places that are trying different structures. So I think it's a shame if you get hung up just on the structure, because the structure is not what people care about. What people care about is, have I got a bus to go where I'm going, can I afford it, can I get on it, and can we manage our lives, because our opportunity cost is huge. If we can't get anywhere, we can't do anything. I'm not standing by the way, so this is not my manifesto. Although if you want to check out Bus Users Manifesto, we have got one. But I do think it's important that people try not to fixate on the regulatory environment. It sounds like a great idea. I'll come back to you in a minute, Alex. It sounds like a great idea because it sounds fair. If the people are in control and the people who elect them are in control. But actually, we're kind of going back to 1985 when there was a lot of skill around. The bus centres of excellence that have been set up are trying to bring back those skills so that that might be a possibility in due course, but isn't there at the minute. All that skill has kind of leached into the private sector. And nobody else has got the skill, they can't do that with the magic wand overnight. Brexit has caused us a lot of loss of bus drivers. Anybody thinking that's not true is looking at the facts. I wonder if Deni's got some stats on this one, or are you just going to run to cover on that one?
Actually, I just want to have a digression on everything what has been said.
Good.
And essentially, maybe public transport has been perceived differently because it's focused more on commercial, and what we hear from candidates here is how they're gonna sort out the commercial side. However, we have to think on a public transportation as a part of infrastructure. Same as road, same as footpath, same as a cycle lane. It's completely the same thing. One differentiation between those two is that public transport is a dynamic infrastructure, and we have to accept that, and we have to find the right model which going to work. And that's the reason why I'm here, just to listen actually candidates what can bring to the table, and I personally will work with anybody just in order to bring public transport on a better place, and actually because that actually deserved spot, especially in the private area. and we haven't touched the area which buses doesn't cover. Yes, we have some sort of a demand responding transports, but we have to have cover every single village, and that's the what I was trying to get from candidates, but they get into commercial side rather than getting to the point how actually things could be sorted out on the right way. There is no one solution fix all. It's not Sheffield, it's not Manchester, it's not London. We have to actually think differently and find solution which fits Stevenage.
You're right, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Alex is desperate to come back.
Let's just come back. I've just been reflecting on what you're saying, because you're right, and it's come up, and we talked about public ownership. I don't agree that full public ownership in both rail and bus is great. I can just about remember British Rail in the 1980s, and buses weren't better run where they're in public ownership. But you make a really good point. There are commercial bus routes which work. There's people on the buses, they pay their fare, and if they're reliable and turn up on time, that's a great commercial bus route. But there are going to be bus routes in Stevenage which aren't going to be profitable. They never will be, but that they're necessary. And so if we take a hybrid approach like Claire may be saying, and maybe the county council and other stakeholders, we do look at possibly, looking again at the franchise, how can we improve the bus routes? How can we make them more, accessible? But that will come at a price. And so the taxpayer, the people that don't need the buses, have to realise that is a subsidy, that is a service that will be non-commercial and will always be non-commercial. So I think that's what's at stake, and that's the conversation that an MP would have, with bodies like Hearts Partnership and Interlink. Of course, actually, we need to find a bespoke service that is crucial. And Stevenage, there are going to be bus routes that are key for nurses to get to the Lister Hospital, for kids to get to school. They're never going to make a profit, and we need to retain them, but we need to retain them realistically. Just a couple of things as well.
Can I come back?
Oh, right.
We are going to spend the whole
I'll just pass on.
No, I know, but come on, everybody's got a good
All right.
chance to
Hold
say
on.
something. And Kevin, jumping up and down now.
Just a quick right, since we're all having a right of reply, I'll try and keep my one quick. The point about this is absolutely we need a solution, but we all live in different parts of the country, we all need different solutions where we are. But it comes down to power, okay? How do we, it's a public service, how do we, the public, influence our public services? And at the moment, like I said earlier, once the contract's signed off, that is it. We need to give powers back to our local representatives. It's all very well saying, well, the MP will bring them all together, and I will certainly, as the MP, knock a few heads together, but I won't have the power to do anything. I can bring people together, try and get them to agree, but that's the best I can do. What we need to do is give control back to our communities. That used to exist, we need to give it back, and that's what a Labour government will do.
We shall have a little chat about West Midlands Partnership. So yes, you're going to get a comeback if you want to come back, and otherwise you're not going to be sitting like that. I hate this woman, yes. Go for it. Don't flannel.
So, 20% of households in Stevenage do not have access or own a car or a van. Another 40% have access to only one vehicle, which chances are it's from the commuter run. So I'm guessing at any one time, a third of households do not have access to a car. So if they can walk or cycle, excellent. If they can't, what do? We need a good, fully integrated, affordable, reliable bus service. And if that costs money, then we have to pay it because the people need it. And if that means subsidies, we need to subsidise. And I believe... Sorry, did you want to interrupt?
He was heckling.
Oh, and another heckler, another rude man. So let's look at the big picture and think about who's going to be affected the most. The poorer people, as always, bear the brunt of everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come in on this one?
Yes, I do, yes.
Okay, and then we'll move on to the next question. So save any other frustrations for post the meeting, okay?
Thank you. I just want to clarify what I was talking about with quangos. There are good quangos, but there are bad quangos.
Okay.
That's where I was coming from, and there are at least 27 that we have found that come under the X list basically.
Okay,
I just
some
wanted to
just
share.
lost their way or lost their relevance at some point.
yes, and where they are just of no use. I mean, if they were of use, we wouldn't be considering them, but we are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, shall we move on to the next question?
Yes, please.
Moan about something else. Good, eh? Okay, is Maureen in the room?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Stagecoach is currently holding a public and passenger consultation on proposed changes to some of its routes around Cambridge. Likewise, TfL has conducted consultations with Londoners on their bus services in recent years, whereas across Hertfordshire, operators take a free hand on services that are run commercially, including those which have been first established through local government contracts as an essential service, or, like in Stevenage, created in hand with the New Town Development Corporation. Now, the present trend of the general trend of cuts needs to stop. The question I'm asking is, to what extent do you think alterations to registered routes and services should be subject to statutory public consultation under planning regulation?
Thank you. Okay, do you want to start us off on this one?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes. I think, well, as I said before, I think that buses should be in-house, so they shouldn't be accountable to business. They should be accountable to the local people's needs, and they should be involved in conversations about everything. And if they're owned by the local authority, then the vote counts as well. So that's, I think, really important. You talk about the trend of cuts. Cuts are bad. Every £1 invested in public transport generates about £4.50 for the local area. So cutting just doubles the pain, absolutely doubles the pain. So yeah, absolutely. Accountable to the local people, provide the service they need, and invest in that service to improve productivity, GDP, whatever the phrase is for the local area. Thank you.
Josh, go on.
Well, you raise a really good question. You raise a really good question there, because you're not just talking about the problem, but also you're talking about how that affects everyone else. Because I don't know how to put this exactly into words, but I see what you mean, because there are because as well, some people are able to, and afford a pass that basically decreases the cost a bit of taking a bus, for example. At the same time, there are other people who may see that as a problem, or may find that as a bit of an injustice, because while others are using this pass, they're still paying the regular amount, but even though it's a fair, cheap price, there's still that uproar. And one thing that we have considered is possibly creating a payment scheme where we're still working on the ins and outs of it, but where it equalises this issue. So there won't be this some are paying less to use a bus while other people are paying a bit more. We're working on ways to equalise this and even encourage others to use this same payment scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have at the moment a £2 fare, which was brought up earlier on, which is a scheme that's currently running to try and equalise the fares for people who are in work and not eligible for various passes. And I think that quite a number of people were a bit surprised and I was disappointed to not see anything specific about that in the Labour manifesto. Are you able to completely break ranks and give us details on that tonight?
Well,
Is that better? Right, very loud. Right. Okay, so I'm not going to make any funding commitments, as you know, and I shouldn't. And that's not responsible. I'm not going to, you'll hear some candidates who say...
It was an unfair
Yeah, but I'm not going to tonight. But I will do. I will happily talk about the manifesto and what I know I can do. Back to Maureen's question, and Maureen, I think you hit the nail on the head about working together. This is a new town, and a lot of what made it an integrated new town, a lot of that has been lost. Now, what we do now have is that there have been some bus changes in the last year. Many of you will have seen that around the town, the Bogs was part of that, and that's great. Sort of in that, and there was campaigns by, I think it was Anne Meldon in Bedwell did a great job at getting a new bus route going through Bedwell. That's great, but we can't have this kind of ad hoc procedure going forward. I would want Bogs and residents like Anne to be part of a proper consultations process, and I'm afraid, make no bones about it, it does come down to structures. It really, really does, because look at Stevenage itself, a new town. The fact that it was all put together and thought through and planned. We have the benefits to this day, the road system, the cycle system. We had a great bus system. That's fallen apart under privatisation. We have to go back to those first principles. So I'm afraid it does come back to that, because only then can you actually really properly involve our communities and the people who use the buses, and many of those who don't use our buses but would like to.
Thank you, Maureen, for your question. We probably will disagree on the cuts aspect. I just want to reiterate that there's been billions of pounds of investment into buses and infrastructure since 2010 under the Conservative government. 60 million directly into Hertfordshire, and it's created more buses, it's reduced bus fares, all those improvements with accessibility, the electric buses, and of course the 80 million that will come to Hertfordshire as part of the reallocation of HS2 funds. So I believe that there are key infrastructure developments coming into this county and this town. I believe it is about the structure, but I don't think changing the structure is going to work. Just letting someone else run something without knowing how we're going to properly fund it, well, we do know because in West Yorkshire it's going to cost millions of pounds, isn't going to solve anything. I don't believe it will. Of course, though, consultation is key, and we are acutely aware of how this was a new town and that there are services, therefore, routes that aren't ever going to be profitable, but they are important. And of course, stakeholders, user groups, the local authorities, along with the bus operators, must work in close contact to make sure that those are viable. So, but it is, for me, it's about affordability. That's going to be the key thing. And you're right to bring up the thing, which I can make a funding committal to. It's in capital letters in the manifesto. We will maintain the £2 cap on bus fares for the next 5 years. And we mentioned Transport for London earlier. Now, they may be doing a hybrid structure, which could or not be working, but let's be clear. London ticket fares are up 6.1%, hitting hard-working families more. In Labour-run Wales, tickets are up 8.1%. And in England, under Conservative councils, they're down 6.2%. You're going to get a bus if you can afford it. Under Conservative councils, they're cheaper, and where Labour is running this country, they are more expensive.
Do you think that's got anything to do with the government being more inclined to give better settlements to Labour-run authorities?
No, I don't think so. It's one of the wonders of devolution, I suppose. When you give Labour control of a certain area, they're going to run it the way they want to. Just to be clear, though, England isn't just Conservative councils, well, not anymore anyway. But so I do think that it's purely where Labour has control. Okay. The statistics are clear. Bus fares are more expensive. Well, it's just an observation.
Let's ask Deni what he's got to add to this conversation, and come to a gentleman now. He's been very polite and very patient.
Actually, I will continue my story about the infrastructure and how we actually should perceive public transport as an infrastructure. Just to give you a hint, Hertfordshire make about, I will tell you right now, provision for highway and transportation infrastructure of 400 million. However, only 20 million goes towards public transport. Everything is put in the highways. Mm. And okay, what we're doing, we just building more roads. And if we build more roads, yes, we will have more cars. And that's not gonna solve the problem, because that's didn't show that it's gonna solve the problem. What I believe that should the next government do is focus more budget on public transport, and then we will see less car on the streets and less and much more frequent bus services, and also reliable services. Because what's happening with Arriva, we don't know. They've been bought, and they cutting costs, and they start to shutting down the garages. And I'm concerned if one town focused only on one bus operator, that will run out of options if that company actually pull itself from the town, as we saw in High Wycombe recently.
Okay, thank you. This gentleman has been very polite, but was doing the kind of 5-year-old desperate to get mum's attention. There you are.
Has to take chance. Be very wary about going down the statutory regulation path, because does anyone remember the Speller Amendment? I thought
We're
not.
getting a bit
That,
specific now.
the Speller, my background is more on railways, but the Speller Amendment allowed any operator to try a service, and if it didn't work, they could walk away from it. And loads of services started. And Kettering to Corby is the best example. That works so well, it's now electrified and hourly direct service to London. Whereas if you hadn't had the Speller Amendment, and the operators were stuck with a service that may be totally sort of not really doable or a drain on resources, not a good path down which to tread.
Thank you for that comment. Anybody want to come back directly on that?
Actually, you raise a really good point there. Thank you for sharing that. Regarding what I was mentioning earlier about the payment scheme, I mean, I managed to find exactly where I've written that down. Like, one of the things we did consider was like possibly like an app or a card system that would give that almost similar to Trainline, if you're familiar with that app, where it would actually decrease the cost of that, also taking into consideration what you just said, but also like decreasing that, like by giving a free bus ride every 10th trip, which would also make it accessible to all ages. But in regards to what you said, we could also consider that as well. But again, any project, any capital project or related project that we take on, it's the cost that we have to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was another point that came out of what you were saying, is the actual difficulty of getting into this whole business of running a bus for any operator thinking of getting into it. It's actually quite a regulatory minefield. It requires an awful lot of money to be put beyond use in a way that most entrepreneurs don't have to fulfill those kinds of requirements. It's a bit of an esoteric point, so I don't think it's a hugely exciting one for the crowd in the room, but I am glad you brought it up, because it is one of those things that tends to get a bit lost when you're trying to spread the load. So thank you for that. Were you hoping to come back? You look like
No, I don't really want to talk about Boris Johnson and the dirt he did on London Transport before he left.
Okay, let's not got into personality politics just for now. But I was asked if we could give you a comfort break about 8:30. So can I give everybody 5-10 minutes, and then we'll come back to the thorny issue of low traffic neighbourhoods, which will divide the crowd, I'm sure. So, okay.
Just to clear, first.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, we have very little time left, so we're going to have to keep it fairly concise in your answers. If you could do it yes, no, and absolutely, that would be great. If you've actually got more to say, try and keep it to a couple of sentences, please, because we've obviously taken a lot of time early because I'm such a lax chair. Okay, so if we can go straight into the low traffic neighbourhoods question that Sarah's got. Thank you.
Low traffic neighbourhood schemes have had a mixed reception. So last year the Prime Minister called for a departmental review, and the report published by the Department for Transport in March 2024 generally shows a more positive picture than portrayed in the news and media. There are areas of Stevenage and in Codicut, close to where I live, where many believe would benefit from implementation of an LTN scheme. What are your views on them in principle? And what will you do to encourage provision and sustainability of public transport services in the planning and delivery of such schemes to help achieve successful outcomes where these are required?
Thank you. That's a very well thought through question, which I don't know that everybody's going to have enough time to answer in detail. So if you can talk about your feelings in principle. Josh, I'm going to ask for your views first, then I'm going to come to you, Kevin, then Paul, and then back to Alex, and then Deni. I'll see if you've got something on that.
Awesome. Actually, if it's okay, if you actually, if
You want to go somewhere else first?
Yeah, like
okay, no worries. I'm happy to save a bit of time on that, Kevin.
Thank you.
We'll come to you.
Of course. You can use that.
No, it's not.
Just testing you as
It's
well.
like Panto, isn't it? Right. So, again, we come back to, if you look at Stevenage, the way it was designed, there are so many parts of town which are essentially low traffic neighbourhoods. The Radbourne layout, you know, when you go there, the cars are behind safe area, and actually the idea is that children and others could safely play, walk around without cars getting in the way. However, of course, that has changed because a lot of our houses are designed to be, you know, one car per 3 households. Well, obviously, many households have now 2+. So we've got real issues there with cars on the road, stationary and otherwise. And we have to think about new ways to manage that. Now, one way, sometimes some people say, well, what about low traffic neighbourhoods? And my answer to that is, and I am an absolute pragmatist on these things, is it has to be evidence-based, and I'm glad we've got somebody here who talks about that. And so I'm very, you know, if a new scheme, whether it's an LTN or some other traffic calming measure scheme could be brought in, and firstly there has to be public demand for it, and secondly there has to be evidence that it would work. Otherwise, you have to watch out for unintended consequences. And that is something, you know, I've had experience when I was a councillor for 12 years within that, and particularly in the COVID period, there was a lot of you know, pressure put on to try to separate people traffic, and that's where LTNs were rolled out a lot more. And actually, I think you'll find some LTNs are better than others, and also you've got to what happens when you move traffic elsewhere. So while I'm always happy if I'm the MP for the area to listen to people, you know, I would want there to be a full consensus and well thought through for any change.
Thank you. Okay, I think what I've heard about quite often is coming back to you actually in terms of consultation. Quite often, if it's parachuted in and suddenly go, oh, cow, what's going on? Then people tend to get angry about it. Whereas if it's done in consultation with the people there, you get a lot more buy-in where it works. But you've got to have a model that works. I think that makes sense. Joshua.
Thank you. Thank you. So personally, like, I wouldn't, but what we would do is open it up to the public, you know, and if they want, you know, if they do want that, then that's great. But then what we would also do is, you know, remind people that we, I mean, you know, sorry to use the Q word again, but But you know that we do have like £260 billion that is just being vacuumed, and that we do plan on using that to improve the existing bus and rail services in Caldicott. But for now, like the bus services.
Okay, thank you. So the pedestrianised areas would be up to the local population, you think? Can I come to you, Alex?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much for the question. Listen, I agree with them in principle, actually, and it improves road safety around residential homes and around schools. Fantastic. And look, in Caldicott, I was at Caldicott Parish Council meeting. There has been a demand for it, but what is clear is that the public of Caldicott have had one referendum already. They're about to have another one on the altered plans, and that is right. And that's right. The public have decided it. And actually, I agree with Kevin. I really do agree with Kevin. I think it is about the public. It should decide where the LTNs go. It's the trouble that the Welsh Labour Party, though, didn't agree with Kevin, because we've seen in Wales, with top-down blanket LTN zones, it has been a disaster. They spent £45 million on doing it, and the project could cost the Welsh economy up to £4.5 billion. I will do. I just want to use it as a comparison, and that's why I think we're in consensus here, that as a result of what happened in Wales, the LTNs, we agree with in principle, but it should be up to the public to decide where they go.
I'll bring that up when I'm doing this in Wales.
Okay, thank you. So as we know, Rishi doesn't like them, so he commissioned a review to back up his views and was surprised when people like them. And so he buried the view for 6 months, then they'd come out. Generally, where people have them, they like them. Obviously, if they're imposed, they're not so popular. But if people have discussed it and it's brought in, they like it. Improved air quality, improved safety, less collisions. In Wales, of course, where they have a 20-mile-an-hour blanket zone in areas, traffic collisions, the cost of a traffic collision is now 20% less on the insurance claims. So that's really good for reducing insurance costs in the long term for people. So let's look at the whole picture. LTNs are good, where they're well designed and where people want them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to take this on any longer because we've got a lot of questions to try and get through. So I'm going to come straight to Jason. Where's Jason? There you are. Thank you, Jason.
Within the constituency, there are at least 4 main pinch points for traffic regular builds, which can greatly impact public transport. These are the Welling Junction on the A1M, the approach to Leicester Hospital, both from the town and the A1, on the way into Stevenage from Medborough, and to the north of Welling North on the East Coast Main Line, where there's only one line. As a result, I would be curious to know how the panel would suggest to various agencies that pinch points are resolved.
Thank you very much. Can I start with you on that?
Yes. Shall I go loud? Okay. My short answer is
we have a mic.
Oh,
You might. It didn't work for me.
Is this on? It's flashing at me.
All right, not to worry. The other one's coming back.
Alright, well, the microphone.
Just work.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so yes, my answer is I'd be curious to know too. It seems very technical to me and way above my pay grade, and I'm going to defer to Deni to tell us the answer to this one.
Oh gosh, I didn't come to you with the low traffic.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that
okay,
first, and I'm well aware of what's happening at the Caldicott. I was part of some of the schemes which are going to be being built in Caldicott, and essentially there will be a new roughly 1,000 homes in near future, and High Street is already packed with unlawfully parked cars on a footway. Even if you go on a Google Street, you will see how cars are actually parked. And if the question is about LTN, it should be introduced or not, my professional opinion is yes, because it needs to be slowed down. There is no more room for footways, actually. Carriageway needs to be slightly shrinked and minimized to actually encourage drivers to slow down. Although it is frequent road, However, it's not road for the car. Streets are not meant for cars. Streets are actually meant for people. And that's the core of or everything. And actually, highway code tells that pedestrians have a priority, then cyclists, then public transport, and if there is a space, then will be cars, space for cars. If there is no space for car, they will be banned. Simply, you will have a actually street which is fully pedestrianized, and actually that shows so far that growth economy.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Can I ask you the more technical question about what we could do with those particular congested spaces? Let's start off with, because it is a more technical, how do we solve a problem with, not really, but you know what I'm going to.
Both junctions from A1M are congestion, and little to nothing can be done there. However, alternative is always exist, and actually that alternative is the rail, and how people actually which use cars to get to Stevenage can use actually public transport. Let them encourage them to use public transport. Is it the problem because of there is no east to west link in Hertfordshire, or is it something different? But detailed study has to be made in order to actually understand what will be the best possible solution for that, because I cannot give you from the top of my head. But however, there is a need for detailed study which could show how actually congestion could be solved, and those big pointers, as mentioned, could be solved.
I think there's always going to be a number of people who will not give up the car unless it's priced from their cold dead hand. But there is a large number of people who would be willing to change their travel habits if it wasn't too painful, too expensive, and too inaccessible. So I think there is an element there. Back we go again to consultation. What would make those people change habits? So there's a gentleman at the back. Have you got a question that's pertinent to this? That's nice and quick.
Absolutely. You said the roads are for people. No, the point is, yes, they are for people, but some of those people drive cars. I've never driven a car in my life. I think they're dying out. Dual carriageway generation is on its way out. But low traffic neighbourhoods, putting little Hitler politicians love to say, no, you can't drive, no, we're going to do this. They love it. But just let the car die out, but produce the alternative. And I'm very disappointed that none of you have mentioned it. I know this meeting is about buses, but look, Stevenage is 100,000 people. Any town of 100,000 people or over, it's got to have a light rail system. And rather than turning Connecticut into Dedicut, you should actually be thinking about improving public transport. If somebody drives a car, I would never drive a car, but if somebody wants to drive a car, let them drive down that road, but make sure that the alternatives are there so they don't feel
I think there needs to be a level of equity about this. So an equitable use of what space is there for the necessary modes of transport for people, some of which might need a car. I accept that, especially in the rural areas. This gentleman's got
Thank you for our observation.
I hate to say this, it's 30 years out of date, because in 1994 there was a plan to widen the A1. The houses were compulsorily purchased. But then, for some strange coincidence, in 1997 it all got cancelled because we'd have a widened railway. Railtrack produced a proposal, but then Railtrack was wound up as well. I will not say by whom, several of us know that.
Please don't take us down that particular rabbit hole. We really don't have an awful lot of time. Alex, did you want to come back on this?
No, it's a great question. It's one that, listen, someone who's lived in Stevenage all his life, normally getting caught at that Welling Junction coming back from London is horrendous. It's the big gateway into our town, and it needs to be sorted out. As one of the audience members just said, there was a plan to widen the A1M. Look, no one's going to lie. It would cost an absolute fortune. It would cause huge disruption. But at some point, we've got to admit that something has to be done there. I do take the gentleman's point, actually, and I completely understand. But the trouble is, at the moment, we have lots and lots of people driving cars, and my party does still need to be on their side as well, whilst also allowing the best public transport we can. And someone else made the point about rail, and that's where that second bottleneck is, and there was plans to put the second line in. It would have crossed over Welling Viaduct and changed the look of it, but it was necessary. I do think getting people off, the key thing is rail fares, and that's why it's really good that we capped the rail fare. Rail fares haven't gone up, the Conservatives have secured that, so it is cheaper to use the railway. I've been campaigning to bring back the Leadworth Express, that would have called it Welling North as well, and that's something that I will be working with Govia and Thameslink to do. But also there's something else, just on road congestion. You know, there have been plans in this constituency to close the Lytton Way as part of the Stevenage generation. That can't happen. That will lead to more road congestion. And Labour run North Herts also want to close Chinese Lane to build new homes. Again, that would cause even more road congestion on those pinch points into Watton Road. So for me, let's not close any more roads. Let's make rail more effective, but let's also face the reality that we do still need cars. People are still driving.
I'd love to know where you buy your rail tickets.
Yeah, my rail tickets have gone up recently.
Yeah, well,
They've gone
anyway,
up.
let's not get into
They've
that
gone
one. Joshua, did you want to come in on this one?
Absolutely. In fact, you know, you have raised a good point, and you know there should be alternatives, and you know there are people who don't drive. I mean, I don't drive, so you know I'm completely in the same boat as you. I mean, I'll try to be as discreet and precise as I can, but you know, like. You know, we can encourage people, you know, to walk and cycle more, especially in like related streets and like neighbourhoods, especially where where that should be encouraged more. We can we hope that this will lead to money used for travel to be used instead to contribute to making bikes less expensive and giving maintenance vouchers for tyres, lighting, security. But we also have to remember that many bikes are stolen, and this is often, is due to locks being of poor quality and storage areas. But we could improve, with the money we could improve locks. We could create places where bikes could be stored, safely, like the bike hangars that we have seen in London. There's plenty of things that we could do, but definitely encourage cycling. More cycling for those who don't drive, and it's very straightforward as that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back on this?
No, I've shouted about rail going up even though they've been capped.
I'm not sure we answered your question really, Jason, but we did try. Oh, you haven't had a go with it.
Sorry. Hello. Yeah, I think I want to come back to what Deni was saying earlier. Actually, it's much about wider connectivity across our county and beyond the wider region actually. So that will help alleviate pressure points because there are lots of people who don't want to be stuck in their cars. Actually, it'd be much more convenient. They could do their work. They could do other things. They could get onto decent public transport around. So better bus services and better rail services. And on rail services, I mean, I know we're talking about buses tonight, but since it has been brought up, our privatised rail companies are falling apart, and they're handing in their franchises all the time. What we want to do as a new Labour government is, as they come to an end, we will integrate them into Great British Railways. So that we can, again, it's about planning and planning based on what we need, not what companies are able to do.
Thank you. I'm going to move us on now. Because we're running so short of time, actually we're out of time, so if anybody needs to go, I promise not to take it personally and start crying. Hugh's question, I'm just going to summarise this myself, if you don't mind.
Well, it's not my question. I was handed that when I got in here.
Oh,
It's a line I can't say. I'm afraid. It's not my question. I was just given that. I made my point.
So, what the question was about was an elderly lady having a medical emergency in a bus shelter, and when the emergency service were called, people were asking what the postcode of the shelter was to give the emergency services. And the suggestion was that would it make sense to have all bus shelters coded with their contact points, with a postcode. I'm not sure if you're aware of something called What 3 Words, which maps out everywhere in the world, so that you could give those codes to you can't bear to.
Well, no, but the point is, that was during the farmers market, where we have the farmers market bus service, which has the timetable on it, which gives the location of Stevenage Farmers Market. It's not, we don't use the O word like Stephen would there, but it is Stevenage High Street SG1 3EA. It was there in Gill Sands. So actually, for once, the postcode was there.
Well, that's great, but it obviously wasn't
So the
quite
question
obvious
is
to the people concerned. So
it's misplaced.
do we need something on every bus pole that says this is where you are in case of emergency? I think that's a very sensible solution. Is there anybody who disagrees with that? No? Hurrah! Why should we go up the shop? Margaret, again, this is quite. Do you mind if I sum up the question for you? We know that motor vehicles are a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. So decarbonising transport must play a key role in tackling climate emergency. We know that plenty of people in Stevenage don't have access to their own car, which is a point that was made by Paul earlier on, and the younger generation is increasingly opting not to drive, and God knows they can't afford the insurance, and neither can their parents if they've got them. So what strategies could be implemented to make public transport more appealing for the younger demographic, while also ensuring there will be enough qualified drivers recruited to drive them? Who wants to have a go at that?
I'll be brief. I've already mentioned what we should do about drivers, so I'll move quickly on.
Okay.
Buses that are comfortable, buses that are warm, except when it's hot and when they should be cool. Wi-Fi that works, prices that are low and free for under 18s, Green Party manifesto, and reliable. I think that'll do.
Thank you very much. Nice and concise. That's what we like. Alex, do you want to have a go at that one?
No, I'll be quick actually. I do think education plays a role. So even when young people are still at school, to be educated about the benefits of buses and to not be kind of to have a positive message when it comes to that. In terms of recruitment, I think all stakeholders can promote recruitment wherever they can. There are opportunities for bus drivers and working in that industry, and there needs to be a very proactive approach from the Member of Parliament, from local authorities, and from the commercial companies. I think the key thing, the major thing that's going to get young people on the buses, as it were, is price. And that's why the Conservative commitment to go anywhere for £2 is absolutely cast iron. It's absolutely the best policy to get young people not driving onto the buses because they can afford it. I think that's the key objective.
You promised it for the rest of the year.
For the next 5 years. For the next 5 years now. Yeah.
Didn't read that bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next 5 years. We're the only party that has.
Yes, I think we're all getting that. Kevin.
Thank you. So, without wanting to repeat too much, I think we're mostly in agreement. We need more convenient and well-designed buses so that people can travel, but like I was saying earlier, be able to do their work in them as well now, with some for longer bus journeys. And also coming to the point about attracting, a new workforce, and that goes right back to the first question. I think we need to encourage and train our young people and show that actually, being a bus driver is a career worth having, and that's to start early on. So I would certainly, as a local MP, encourage that and advocate that in our town. And finally, on the point about bus freezers and all that, watch out when politicians start making promises, see where it's being funded from. So there's been quite a lot of that in the last few days, certainly from this side here, where I'm not quite sure where the money's coming from.
Enough. It's not argy-bargy. Joshua, I know we're getting the money from Quangos being shut down. What are you going to do to make it
I'll forward what I've said before, because it does relate to this, but also
but also like making sure that we reduce like cycling accidents. So we need to make cycling proficiency compulsory, and cost is covered to ensure that it is accessible to everyone straight away. But then also another thing that we haven't mentioned that we could consider is that there already there exists like several walking clubs that encourage longer walks, raise endurance levels, and stuff like that. But of course, there are some that that prefer gyms, and then like when the winter comes, they're back in their cars and everything. But what we could do is create a reward scheme for walkers to incentivize them. Again, this could be an app, this could be a system. It's an idea.
And that could maybe include some encouragement for people to become drivers of buses and have youth services run by and for young people, potentially at some point. Thank you. Deni, you were waving at me in a very polite fashion.
Yeah, thank you very much. I see that your people actually start to sleeping a little bit, and I just wanted to energize you and wake you up. And I would like to ask you a question. Do you know what is the average journey per person in England? Can anybody in the room just guess?
An hour. Do you mean the average distance?
Journey in distance.
An hour.
In distance.
How many miles?
11 minutes.
Nobody's going in miles or kilometres here.
Miles. Let's go in miles.
I'll go 2 miles.
5.
4.
Any advance on 2?
5.
10.
17.
Less.
Half a mile.
8.1 for whole England. However, 70% of whole journey are less than 5 miles, which is in walkable distance, which is in cyclable distance, and it is easy to use public transport. However, 70% of people decide in England to drive. Hertfordshire is a little bit better because they have like 52% people who actually drive 5 miles, and they have amazing 30% which walk. And that's where the investment should go, in active travel modes. It's not just because it's fancy or a younger generation likes it. It's more about healthy lifestyle, because that's what brings generation, because that's what's happened in the 60s. And we just completely forgot that and dismissed that, and we drive cars, and even I drive car. However, completely dismissed that I can walk and cycle really easily to do the shopping, to do the regular chores.
I think there's also quite a lot of energy needs to go into making sure that the distance that you're trying to walk is actually free of cars parked halfway up the pavement, not being able to get past with luggage or buggies or kids or a wheelchair or anything else. There is an awful lot of rubbish parking going on in this country, and I would love to see some kinds of system which pays tow trucks to just go and pick them up and take them away. I would love to see that. Whereas somebody will pay the ticket. So this is not my custom, but I do enjoy myself. We've had quite a lot. The last question is about cost of living and making a better value for money, and I think we've actually covered that in quite a lot of answers. So I'm sorry, Trin, if I'm taking your opportunity to shine away. Did you want to desperately ask your particular question on this?
It's not my question.
No, I know. Stop giving the game away to these people, but there are people for whom the journeys are more expensive to travel by public transport than to drive, including the person who was going to come in today, but
Can I just
presumably
say
couldn't.
one thing on this?
Yes.
Yeah, and if you live in the south of Stevenage, you need to go to Lister. You get a bus into town, a bus to Lister, a bus back to town, a bus home. That's £8, despite the fact it's £2 a ticket.
Yeah.
Not very good. Is it £8 to get to the Lister and back? Hopefully you come back. So perhaps we need £2 a day rather than £2 a journey. just possibly.
There are capping systems around that could be brought in.
Yes,
if
we
there's
should.
enough political will for it.
We should definitely bring it in because £2 a bus journey is £8 for some people.
I understand that the bus service improvement plan is actually introducing a lot of improvements for the services to and around the Lister. So it should start to make a bit of a difference. And hopefully...
Still 2 buses.
And two there, two back.
You just need to move house. You make it...
Somebody's got to move it. One point on that. In London, as you know, £1.75p.
Yes.
If you get on the bus and you transfer within 1 hour, you do it the same fare.
2 hours.
You
then.
do
You don't have to
two,
pay.
you can do a 3 if you want to go to 3 shops. You
Yeah,
can do
it is.
three journeys.
No, we get all the best bargains in London, obviously, because we're much more important than anybody else.
True.
But there we go, that's why I don't live in Wales.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So the hopper is a great idea, and you know where we can do it, it's the kind of thing we should be doing. But the other thing you pointed out, actually, linking on, you know, if you actually have a bus service that is designed around people's needs, you know, we would have later bus services and stuff. Someone would be stopping at 8 p.m. Okay, and we would actually have. You wouldn't have to get 2 or 3 buses through our town. Why don't we have a shuttle that goes from the Lister through the town centre to Roaring May? Because you've now got particularly older people who used to go to the anchor stores in the town centre, but now are stranded. Either go to Roaring May, have to drive there, or get family members to take them there. When actually we had a shuttle bus service that could take people who could rejuvenate or help get our town centre going again.
It's
So
not actually just us older people, it's young people trying to get entry-level jobs.
Spot on.
They're working, they start really early, they finish really late, they work ludicrous hours, and they can go one way, they can't get home again. So there we go.
In fact, can I actually add on to that, because that is a good idea, like extending like the bus time, so like you know, like even us youth, young people can actually you know, use these buses, because like some of us, right, we you know, like it's not that we have a different like body clock or something like that where we're nocturnal, but like for whatever reasons, like it might be for educational reasons, it might be job related, but you know, sometimes like we come back late, and because of that, like and because like how bus timetables like stop like at the just right before that moment right before that time when we're actually out and about and we need to get home, it would make more sense to extend the timetable. Now I'm not saying that bus drivers need to do this regardless, because bus drivers are people too, of course. But it's a consideration. It's something that should be done.
It's certainly, given the 24-hour lifestyle that we all seem to expect to lead these days, and the younger you are, the less likely you are to want a 9-to-5 career. I think it makes sense for that to be at the heart of the planning system. Now, I'm going to hold at the moment of the last question that I believe Joe has got for us. Joe, there you go.
Yes,
I'm glad that you managed to actually get that.
As Ed Davies had said, politicians should take themselves less seriously. I run a company, Benny's Possible, running music events. We have one in Datchworth this weekend at the Horn, 3-day, and I just wondered if any of you guys wanted to, one, come along, and two, what would be your drink of choice, considering it's also a beer, cider, rum and gin.
You want me?
Okay, Benny, what's your drink of choice?
Beer. Oh, let's say.
Beer. Alice, I'll come back to you about the other question in a minute. Drink of choice.
Cider.
Cider, Kevin.
An IPA.
I don't drink, so.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but I agree with Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm really boring. I'd have a cup of tea, I'm afraid. I'm really old and boring now. So thank you for that question, Joe. Will you all be going along, getting your wellies out, getting your reindeer out?
Down the horns.
Yeah, you'll all be down the horns. You got your reindeer out with your wellies and your shiwi. I don't know what a shiwi is. Please don't ask me. Okay, no, let's hope not. Okay, I'm going to ask all the candidates to give us one takeaway. Alex, desperate to talk about something.
I want to talk about I didn't come in on that cost of living one.
I know you didn't. I'm really horrible. I didn't mean to knock you out. But if you want to take that in your takeaway remark, then you'll sum up. Last minute, no more than a minute. Because we've kept all these good people 20 minutes longer than we promised to. Do you want a minute to consider that, what you want to say?
Oh, go on then, yeah.
Okay, let's start at your end. 1 minute, what do you want these good people to go away thinking about in terms of the green?
Okay, transport's really important, and we should have a good, integrated, thoughtful transport system. But if we don't address climate crisis, it's irrelevant. So let's deal with what's really important and sort out the climate crisis, because otherwise in 20 years' time you won't round about buses or trains or walking or anything. It's too hot or too cold or too wet, too terrible. So concentrate on the climate crisis. It's not a very cheerful thought, but without sorting that out, there is no hope for anybody in the long term. Sorry.
It's given us a nice optimistic view to finish the evening off, isn't it? Okay, Joshua, cheer us up.
First off, I just want to congratulate everyone for being here. Like, all of you being here, like, really shows us, like, just how important a matter this is. And us as CPA, if you vote for us, we will take this into consideration. And sorry to mention the Q word one more time, but we do, but you know. But we will cut quangos. There is like over £100 billion at our disposal, but we will use it to rebuild Britain. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Kevin, cheers up.
I'll try. Well, let me start with actually the climate crisis there. Transport is going to be part of it, but it should be in everything that we think about. I totally agree. But tonight we are talking about how we get greener, cleaner, more accessible transport. And, you know, Bugs has played a great part in that. We're here for the bus users group, but many of this room aren't just bus users. You know, we might be car users, cyclists, walkers, all of that. And the point is, how do we get more of us doing more of the bus travel and actual active travel? That's what we're trying to do, shift that mode. And I think we've had some good ideas tonight. I've really appreciated Deni giving us some useful statistics. So it's food for thought for me as well. And if I become the MP, I do want to work with experts, and I think experts have had a sort of bad press in the last few years. So good politicians learn from expertise, and that's what I will do if I am your MP. So I really appreciate everyone taking part today, including my fellow opponents in this race. And going forward, I think we know we can have a better bus service. And that does mean we need to give power back to the people through their representatives at a local level, not just through quangos or other institutions. So thank you for having me tonight here. It's been great food for thought, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. No, just to echo actually exactly what Kevin said, it's been a fantastic event tonight. It's been brilliant hearing opinions from everyone on the floor and hearing what the candidates have said. And actually a big round of applause for our chairwoman. She's done a fantastic job. Thank you. She's held us to account, tested us all. And thank you to our expert too. Look, you know, I've got some takeaways tonight. I know buses are extremely important. There's lots of the Conservative Party saying we're on the side of motorists, and we are. We're going to abolish ULEZ. We're going to make sure that it doesn't actually cost you to use your car. But it's also important to invest in our public services, which we have been. I don't agree, surprisingly, that renationalising British Rail is some sunny upland that we're going to suddenly make rail better. I don't agree that handing our bus operations to local authorities is going to make a difference. It's not been properly funded. It's not going to make a difference. I think it needs to stay in the hand of bus operators, but we need to have closer checks on how their reliability, on their punctuality, how they recruit, and what services they offer. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming here tonight. Look, the manifestos are clear. Conservatives are going to cut taxes. Labour are going to raise taxes. That should be the takeaway that anyone takes away when they read both manifestos, because that's it clearly in one sentence. Any vote, be it for Reform, Green or the Liberal Democrats, is not a vote for the Conservatives. So I'd be proud to represent my hometown and my villages as your MP. So please do vote Conservative on July the 4th. But until then, it's been a pleasure being with you all this evening. Thank you.
Conclude and to promise to you all, because I'm completely independent and I'm passionate about public transport and making life easier, because it's not just public transportation, it's not just infrastructure, it's about society as a whole. And I can give you my word that I will hunt them down, whoever actually wins, to make actually what they promised tonight. And that's what I can promise you.
Well, everyone for coming tonight with a round of applause, and